I went to the right bar, met the right guy. His name was Don Phillips. He was in town casting a film. 5 hours later, we got kicked out of So Said Bar, and he said, "Have you ever done any acting before?" And I said, "I was in a Miller Lite commercial for about that long. It didn't really count. It was like not even really a modeling job. It was just like, that was me right there. No one really even recognized me." But he said, there was a film, the script I'm in town casting for, there's a part you might be right for. Come to this address, pick up the script tomorrow morning. I did 9:30. The character had 3 lines, was in a few scenes, and I remember going back home to Longview, where I was from, and working on this character for 2 weeks. Came back and read for it and got it. The film and the role was David Wooderson in film Dazed and Confused, which was my very first film. Now, when I went and read for that, it was obvious to Rick that I was not that guy. One, when I was in a fraternity, I had my jeans pressed, I tucked in, I shaved before going for this job interview, because that's what I was brought up to do, right? But as soon as he said, "Okay, let's read," I kind of kicked back and did my version of Wooderson. And he goes, I remember going, wait, you're not this guy. And I went, "No, but I know who he is." And who the guy was for me at that time was who I thought my brother was when I was 10 and he was 17. So I had a very romanticized view. My brother was 7 feet tall in my eyes. His car was the fastest car. His Concorde system was the best sound system in the world. And I remember seeing him leaning against the wall in the smoking section at school, and he was cooler than James Dean to me. So it was a romanticized view of who he was. But that's when my first job and how I started to approach what I was doing, even though I don't know if I really knew what I was doing, was, okay, I may not be this guy, but if I know who this guy is, or I know someone like this, whether they're that way in real life or it's how I perceive them. I'll tell a quick funny story on the way to learning what it is that I do, and some pitfalls that I learned along the way. Dazed and Confused, I ended up working for 3 weeks. There was a lot of improvisation. The other actors in there were lobbing me lines, and I remember having a feeling like, boy, I feel like you could put a blindfold on me and I can be this guy, Wooderson. I feel like you could blindfold me, press record, and put me in any situation, and I'll go to the 7-Eleven. I can buy. I remember going, what would they buy with $5 at the 7-Eleven, or what world that character lives in? What would they know? What they would buy, what they would wear, what they would do in any kind of situation. Well, after about the 3 weeks on that, which was as I said, a lot of improvisation, I went on back to school, came back out to Los Angeles and got a few roles, and it was around Boys on the Side. I had played a few very conservative roles, and I had about a year and a half where I would audition, and I would get 1 callback, 2 callbacks, 3 callbacks, and I never got the part. And I remember feeling like I'm too tight, you know what I mean? I think maybe I'm studying too much. I remember talking to myself, and maybe I'm studying too much about the import of the line and everything. And you know what? I think I need to go back to doing what I did when I first started, which is I was just a guy and I improvised. So I had a film that I was cast for, and I was playing this on-the-border Mexican drug lord. And I told myself, I said, I'm not going to look at the sides. I'm not even going to read the script. It's an on-the-border Mexican drug lord. I hear the synopsis. If I know my man, then I'll show up and obviously I'll read it right before I go on. And if I know my man, that'll be like, well, that's exactly what he'd say. Foolish. I go to set that morning. All right, all I got to do is have a glance at it, and it'll be like, yep, I know how to do it. Well, I look at it right before we're about to say action, and it was a 1.5-page monologue in Spanish. Oh, and I remember I felt this drip of sweat come up on the back of my head and go down, and I for whatever reason, I looked over and I said, can you give me about 12 minutes? Why I said 12 minutes, I don't know. I figured it was like not long enough to be inconsiderate, but long enough to maybe get a little bit of that stuff. Anyway, I think I was horrible in it. I stammered through some Spanish and tried to look at lines. So then I was like, okay, that's not the way to go. There's a blend here of having to do your due diligence, do your studying, but then being able to go there on the day and relax and throw it all away.